The Committee on Science and Technology will come to order. The clerk will take attendance electronically. Okay, close the roll. Okay, now this week, the committee will be taking up House Bills 742, 750, and 916. We've informed the patron on HB 742 that is going to be referred to education. This is an electronic textbook bill, and JCOT's reviewed the issue over the past year, and Delegate Servo and Delegate Torrey have bills on this, and Delegate Service is over in education, so this is going to be referred over there also. So I guess we just take a voice vote on that. So all in favor, say aye. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Oh, Delegate Rust, if you want to, we can take up your bill if you don't want to stay down there. We have HB 750, Delegate Rust.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I apologize, I do not have my file with me. But basically, this is adding clarity to the term communication services on page 20, line 20 and 21, and includes local, wide area, metropolitan, all other data networks. Down on 57, we add in the word data. These are things, Madam Chairman, members of the committee, that VITA already thought they had, but this is clarity. I took it by last week, as you may recall, because we were having some internal discussions with some other departments that were a little concerned about it, but we now think that that is resolved, and I'm not aware of any opposition. This simply makes clear the authority that VITA has, and I'm happy to answer any question that anybody might have.
Is Delegate Ramadan?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Delegate Russ, I'm trying to understand this. What does this do?
It gives them, Madam Chairman, Delegate Ramadan, it clearly gives them the authority to, on these local, wide area, metropolitan, and all other data networks, which they thought they had, but it was not specifically spelled out, and it just makes it very clear.
Any example, Madam Chairwoman? Follow-up question?
Yes, Delegate Ramadan.
Thank you. And I see these that are here. Can you just give me an example to just try to get my mind around what is a wide area metropolitan, all other data?
I'll
An
let
example or two, Eric? Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Eric Link for VITA. Delegate Ramadan, the Delegate Rust was correct when he said that this isn't currently in statutory code. When VITA was established in 2003, in one of the enactment clauses, it very clearly says we have authority over networks. So it is in the Acts of Assembly, but it doesn't appear in our section of the code, and never has, even though we control all the networks for the executive branch. But over the last year, we had a cause to, let's just say, have a spirited disagreement with an agency about whether or not we had authority over their networks. We control all the agency's networks. They went ahead and they added something that we disagreed with them about doing it. The point being, they pointed to the code and said, show me. And so all we had was the acts. And what we're really trying to do here is just have the code reflect what the General Assembly clearly did in the acts. Does that answer your question?
Follow-up question, Madam Chairwoman.
Yes, Mr.
Thank you. Would this be able now to help you go back to that agency and work that problem and get them back under the
The problem,
authority of Vita?
there was kumbaya at the end, but I think this would help us get to that faster if it happens in the future.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Second.
We've been moved to report in a second. All those in favor, vote on the electronic voting board. The yeas are 18, nays 0. Okay, we have up next Delegate McClellan's bill, HB 916, but I believe she is tied up across the hall, so if we can just be in recess for a few minutes while we wait for Delegate McClellan, that's our only remaining bill. Yes, Delegate Marshall.
In the meantime, could someone turn up the heat?
Keep everyone away. Committee will come back to order.
Thank you.
We have Delegate McClellan, HB 916.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I believe there is a substitute. It's cold in here.
Put a motion with the substitute. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, we have a substitute before us.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, with this substitute, what the bill does is basically to try to modernize Virginia's position on access to your own data. And what this does will, hold on, I forgot. Basically says that requires I think it's VITA or CIO, I can't remember now, ITAC, to develop procedures and policies for each agency that if you request access to your own information, how that information will be provided. So right now, the way the bill is written, it only develops those general guidelines and policies for those agencies to do. There it is. It would direct the CIO to recommend data standards and report back each year on those standards so that we can see how our agencies are doing and providing you with access to your own data that they collect.
Madam Chair,
Delegate Marshall.
a question of the patron.
Mm-hmm.
It talks about machine readable data. I mean, is that also, are you referring to a computer with programmable software that allows information from one format to be rendered into another format of easy use for the citizen who wants to access this?
Yes, basically, if you were to request your data, and so that you could get it like on flash drive and take it home, put it on your computer and read it, it requires as part of the procedures that would be adopted for that agency to give it to you in a way that you can put it on your computer and read it, because each agency may not have it in the same format where you could read it.
Further question, Madam Chair?
Yes, Delegate Marshall.
Does this, I mean, one of our former colleagues was head of IT for Virginia. Does that, Sam Nixon, does this mean that, is there a promulgation of a machine-readable format that everybody, does this mean PDF files?
I think it would be up to that agency on whatever is the easiest way for them to do it. They could give it to you in Word, they could give it to you in an Excel spreadsheet, they could give it to you in a PDF. I think the point is that the agency, based on whatever system it uses, will figure out what's the easiest way for them to give it to you so that you can read it.
Thank you.
Dr. Watts?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Clown, this is intended to be a friendly amendment. You have in that developing ITAC, developing it on line 170. You have that they are to develop to allow customers to have safe, secure, machine-readable access. That's line 170 of the substitute. The language safe, secure. But then when you look at line 114, where it's talking about allow data subjects to have electronic machine readable, I was just being doubly careful by adding safe and secure before electronic there as well.
Yes, that's a friendly amendment. I think that was just a drafting error. We intended it to be the same.
I would so move.
Okay, there's been a line amendment moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that amendment is accepted. Delegate Watts, did you have any additional? Okay. As Delegate DeStuff?
I had a quick question, Madam Chairman, for the patron. I see there's no financial impact statement on this, but everybody who's been involved in local or state or federal government knows when you do any kind of an IT change, there is a huge cost associated with it. And I was wondering why there was no financial impact statement along with this bill, because clearly there isn't going to be a financial impact.
Actually, there will not be. Right now, this is only requiring standards to be developed, and the idea is that each agency will conform to those standards as it is able through its existing budget. This is similar to something we did a few years ago with a bill that Delegate Moran had. That now, I can't remember exactly what that bill did, but the idea was we'll develop the standards so that once an agency decides to do it, it is using the same guidelines as everybody else, but it is not requiring them to do any IT changes or implement anything outside of its normal operating procedures.
But once we dictate something like this, this is a requirement, it's not optional for the agencies. And whenever you dictate something like this where it is a requirement, there is going to be an associated cost from an IT perspective. And I think it's silly for us to think that that wouldn't be the case. And I'm not against standards, I'm not against the establishment or implementation of standards, but I am if we're not looking at what the costs associated with the implementation of those standards are.
If you read the language of the bill, nothing in this requires the agency to do anything. What this does is to require that standards be put in place so that if and when an agency does decide to do it, they have a set of protocols uniform across the entire Commonwealth, and they have our instruction that we would like this to be done in a way that the customer can actually read, use, understand their data, and that you'll do it in a way that that data will remain secure so that no one else can take it.
Madam Chairman, if I could ask my final question.
Yes, Delegate DeStuff.
If that were the case, then the last sentence there, that ITAC shall submit an annual report to the General Assembly identifying all agencies that have adopted the standards, tells me that we are asking them to write standards, implement, and adopt those standards.
What this,
So,
sorry.
if that's not the case, then maybe we should strike that sentence there and change the shalls to a may.
Okay, and I'm sorry, what line? What line were you
I'm
on?
referring to line 171, 172.
Okay,
The
then,
ITAC shall submit.
okay, then also, actually, I'll jump into it. Line 205 to 208, where it says, the disclosures to data subjects required under this chapter shall be made. I think, does that get to your question also, Delegate DeStefano?
I believe that one's just referring to how the individuals have to provide information or provide identification, and then how the information would be sent to them. But I'm going back to the overarching infrastructure cost, as I would see it, of writing standards and producing a report that shows how they're going to adopt those standards.
Okay.
Madam Chair, may I respond to both? If the committee would like to strike the sentence on line 171 to 172, I'll defer to the committee, but the intent there, again, is not to require an agency to do anything. It is more to give the General Assembly information on who is doing what. To follow up on your question, line 207 to 208 just makes clear that when agencies are required to disclose data, they may do it either by mail or electronically. Again, it does not impose a requirement on them one way or another. The whole intent here is to say, if you do this, you should do it pursuant to uniform standards across all agencies that will make sure that the customer can use it, that the customer is ensured it won't be hacked, but it is not requiring the agencies to do it now.
Okay, and actually, could I ask counsel if he can clarify any of that for us also, your understanding?
Yeah, sure. The only thing that I was pointing out was that they are adding that records have to be produced in an electronic format. But like she said, it is a different option. But obviously, it's trying to migrate towards electronic access to records. So, as you were saying, I mean, that probably would cost some money at some point if that happens. But as of now, it's just an option. They can still do it in person or by mail.
Madam Chairman?
Delegate Byron?
I just wanted to know if there was a fiscal impact with this bill.
Delegate Ramadan?
Let me get an answer to that. Hold on. Is there a fiscal impact with this bill?
No.
It's free?
Madam Chair, right now, it will not cost the CIO or ITAC anything to develop standards. Those standards do not have to be implemented. If they are implemented, the idea is each agency, as it is able, when it is able, if it wants to, under its existing parameters, including its budget, can do it. All this is saying is, if and when anyone does this, if they do it, we want it to be subject to a uniform standard across the Commonwealth that protects the safety of the information and gives it to the customer in a way they can actually use it.
Follow-up question.
Delegate Byron?
And I agree with the latter part of that, but I'm still just trying to figure out, because we've had presentations before from VITA in regards to where our agencies are. I'm not sure where they are right now as far as updates to their systems, and if they're all at a level right now where they could absorb this. Like anything else, when you add something that's permissible, that's fine, but then the pressure to provide the access, then of course does become budgetary, and I would want to know what type of figures we're looking at for implementation by the agencies, and if they've already done other things that get them even to the ability of doing what we're asking them to do. That's all.
All I can say is I did not receive a fiscal impact statement for the original bill. My understanding is the agencies do not do additional fiscal impact bills on substitutes until they are adopted. But in my discussions with the agencies, the intent was that this is not imposing a cost on them.
Delegate Simon?
Madam Chairman, a question for the patron. Isn't it possible that migrating to electronic transmission of records could save money for agencies? I can think of an example of, when I use an ATM now, that allows the bank to have fewer tellers. I don't have to go and use staff time. If the only way to deliver a record in the past securely was to put it in a piece of mail, send it to a mail room, the mail clerk would have to handle it, put postage on it, send it there, and then respond by paper and mail, it seems like that would have a cost as well. So isn't it possible that by developing these standards and making it easier for agencies to migrate to electronic transmission records, we could actually realize some savings in those agencies?
Yes, although I just want to clarify that this does not require them to archive or give anything electronically. This is just saying if and when you do it in a way that the customer can use it and in a way that's safe.
Any further?
Madam Chairman, my light's been on for 10 minutes.
Okay, sorry, Delegate Servo?
Thank you. I had two, I think. I had one question and one suggestion. First of all, the suggestion is, we're talking about lines 171, 172. It would seem to me that as opposed to knowing who has adopted the standards, we probably want to know who has not. It would seem to me that would probably sort of give us more information about sort of the work needing to be done. I don't know if the patron has any views on that, but it would seem to me that ought to be the report we receive, not who has, but who hasn't, because that lets us know sort of how many people out there, how many agencies out there have not adopted the standards yet. Has there been any discussion about that?
I think it's 6 of one, half dozen the other. I think if you have a report that lists agencies that have, by default, you know who hasn't. But I defer to the committee on what kind of report they want, or if they want a report at all.
Okay.
Okay, Delegate Burke?
Further, I have a question, Madam Chairman. Well, many of us don't know all the agencies that are out there. The state government's pretty big. It would just seem to me that it would make more sense to say who has not adopted them as opposed to who has. The second question I had was I was comparing your first version with your second one, and I was trying to figure out how the two related. In your first version, the language specified exactly which government agencies were to be covered, I guess, or it says DMAS, SOL, Department of Tax. And I've been having probably a 10-year battle now with the Department of, change their name, Criminal Justice Services, more specifically the Division of Forensic Science, which maintains data on many Virginians when they come into contact with law enforcement. And they seem to have problems producing them in machine-readable format, notwithstanding the fact that they have it. They claim that it's a big problem. And there are other parts of the state that maintain data on people that would make everybody's lives a lot easier if they could be accessed in electronic format. And in your substitute, it doesn't seem to have a list of agencies. It seems to be sort of broadly applicable. So I just wanted to make sure that the DOC was included in your substitute. Is that?
The idea of the substitute was, rather than trying to identify which agencies would have access to your data, is just to say, we will have a blanket policy that could be applicable to any agency that has your data so that you can have access to it.
I think that's the better way to proceed. Thank you.
Okay, Delegate Burke?
Thank you, Chairman. I had a question on line 169, that section where it says standards to allow consumers to have access. And also back on 113 where it says promulgation of standards to allow data subjects to have access. Who actually is that specifically that would have access to that, data subjects and consumers?
I think that's a drafting error. It's designed so that you have access to only your data. So I, Jennifer McClellan, if I wanted to know what DMAS had about me or VBON, DMV, it's me, and that's it. So that, I think, is just a drafting error. We could either go with consumer or the data subject, but the idea is only Delegate Berg can access Delegate Berg's information that an agency has.
If it would be possible, I would suggest that we make that individual then, and we actually define that as an individual's personal information, and it wouldn't include potentially some groups or some ill-defined other agencies that might technically be consumers or data subjects.
I would accept that as a friendly amendment, and so on line 70, you would strike consumers and insert an individual.
And similarly on 139, 113, instead of data subjects. And in fact, if that's elsewhere in the bill, it would probably be better to read individuals instead of data subjects.
Yes, I accept that as a friendly amendment. I think 14, you probably have to change there to his as well. Or his or her.
Okay, those are, someone want to make a motion for those amendments?
I would make the motion that we make those changes to read individual.
Okay, council, you want
Yeah, I would just point out that data subjects is a defined term in that title. It's defined as an individual about whom personal information is indexed or may be located under his name, personal number, or other identifiable particulars in an information system.
Madam Chair, could he accomplish the same thing by making an individual data subject? Does that do what he's looking for?
A data subject is an individual, so I think if we just said data subject for all those instances, that would take care of it.
So on line 170, instead of consumers or an individual, you'd say a data subject.
Okay, so do we have a motion to accept those amendments?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion is accepted. Actually, I wanted to, could we maybe hear from Eric with Vita, maybe to address, just generally, address how the bill would operate for you and how you see it working?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Eric Link with Vita. We just saw the substitute first thing this morning, so we really haven't had a chance to kick the tires, so to speak. 2 points I would make. One, with regard to the fiscal impact statement, the delegate was correct when she said when a substitute is adopted by a committee, then we take a look at that as the new legislation and determine whether there's any fiscal impact. I can't opine on that right now because I haven't had a chance to talk to my folks back at the agency. The second point that I would observe is that the bill does appear to centralize things with VITA a little more. So that'd be something that I'd be a little concerned about in terms of the fiscal impact for us. But again, I need to go back and talk to my agency folks.
Okay. So, given we want to make, we can maybe check on some of these other Lloyd amendments to make sure we have individual issues addressed and so that Vita can look at it. Would it be okay in a friendly manner if we just go by for the day and then make sure we've addressed all these things and bring it back next week?
I think my only question would be for Vita, if the fact that the committee has adopted the substitute today would give you what you need to be able to.
We have a 24-hour turnaround, so I think so.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Delegate Ramadan?
Two questions, if I may, Madam Chair. The patron, would you help me out, please, to start with, what does ITAC stand for and who is it comprised by?
ITAC is, so if you look on I can't remember what it stands for honestly, but if you look on, starting at line 139, it outlines what the duties and the powers of ITAC are, and
Do you know who makes up ITAC?
gubernatorial appointees.
Okay, and I'm looking through this, that brings me to the point, Delegate McLellan. If you look through line 139 through 160, you'll see that the nature of ITAC is to advise, 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 advise. Yet for the first time now, we are asking ITAC to develop something. So I have several concerns. Does ITAC have the capability to develop this stuff? Is this gonna cost, how many more meetings? Aren't there costs for those meetings? Can they do it? Do they have the expertise to do it? And do we want, as a body, to start giving them mandatory requirements of development that gubernatorial appointees might not be able to do, versus advise, 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 as obviously this commission has been?
Well, I would note that while we are having ITAC develop it, they are recommending to the CIO, which is still an advisory position. I think ITAC is in a better position to develop recommended standards than the CIO himself would be, given the CIO's other duties. And the purpose of ITAC is to be an advisory board. I would also note that in our original bill, we added these duties to ITAC, and I had not heard any concern from ITAC or the CIO that they thought it was inappropriate for ITAC to do that. But now if we take this by for the day, when Vito takes a look at that, I'm sure if they have a concern with whether ITAC is the appropriate agency to do it, they'll let me know.
Okay, can we get as well a definition of members of ITAC and what they're doing, what are their professional capabilities to do so?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair,
Delegate Marcy?
motion that the matter go by for the day and allow for the patron to discuss with ITAC, the acronym Information Technology Advisory Council, so that we have some, maybe some more information in order to assess this bill.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. We'll work with you on that, thank you.
Coincidentally, I have an appointment.
So there being no further business before the committee, the House Committee on Science and Technology is adjourned, and we will meet again on Monday, February 3rd at 10 a.m.